Alright, so today we're going to be taking a look at the modern USMC rifle squad from the Cold War until now. Now, not going to say too much on it just because I've spent like the last 3 to 4 hours trying to get this camera to work on OBS. Has not worked because the webcam I'm using right now makes my face look insanely greasy, makes me look like I'm sweating a lot these past few videos. So that's, hopefully I can get it up by before the next video. But in any case, let's go ahead and get to the actual video. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, it does help me a lot. Hit that notification bell right there so you get notified every time I do upload. Sometimes I'm uploading twice a day. Now I'm working on them whenever I can and releasing them at some point the next day. That way you at least have one fresh new video to watch at your leisure. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see how the modern USMC rifle squad has changed since the Cold War.
This video is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. In last week's video, we looked at how the Marine Corps Rifle Squad went from 8 riflemen to the World War II fireteam layout that survives to this day. In this video, we're picking up from that video, looking at the squad as new weapon systems were introduced through the Cold War and how the Marine Corps intends to modernize and future-proof it heading into the 2020s. To recap, at the end of World War II, the Marine Rifle Squad consisted of a squad leader and 3 fire teams of 4 men each. The squad leader was a sergeant armed with an M1 carbine, and each fire team consisted of 1 team leader, ranking corporal and armed with an M1 rifle, 1 automatic rifleman, ranking private or PFC and armed with an M1918A2 BAR, 1 assistant automatic rifleman, ranking private or PFC and armed with an M1 rifle, and 1 rifleman, ranking private or private first class and armed the same.
Alright, so just real quick, and I know that none of this is wrong, at least as far as I know, because I don't remember learning about any of this specifically at SOI or boot camp or anything like that. I mean, obviously everything in here is going to be different, and it's going to show that general progression as to how it looks now. Like now, the squad leader symbol looks like a circle with an X in the bottom part shaded, if I remember correctly. The team leader is circle, the same slash, but it's going at a diagonal instead. And the automatic rifleman, I think it's the same. I think there might be like the little tail, the arrow right there. The assistant automatic rifleman, I think they just have the circle with the letter A. And the rifleman is pretty much the same, it's just a circle. Alright, so real quick with the ranking thing. These are not 100% absolute in terms of, I mean, I would assume it probably even would have been back then as well. I mean, I'm pretty sure they would want a sergeant to be the squad leader. But sometimes, say, for example, the sergeant got shot, something happened, now the corporal is taking charge, and if he goes down, private takes charge, so on and so forth, right? And a lot of that is just depending on the situation. You might get put in a leadership position like that. So other than that, though, everything, I mean, honestly, it looks almost exactly the same.
This squad organization continued through the Korean War with little change. In 1952, carbines would be withdrawn from Marine Corps service, so at that time, the squad leader would be rearmed with an M1 rifle. More major changes came in 1961, following the introduction of new weapon systems and the adoption of the modern rank system. First, the M1 Garand and M1918A2 BAR was replaced with a new M14 rifle, which had been envisioned to replace rifles, automatic rifles, carbines, and submachine guns. The automatic rifleman's M14 would likely be modified for the automatic rifle role, initially just with a bipod and later with a new stock under the M14A1 or M14E2. Second, the Lance Corporal rank was introduced between Private First Class and Corporal. This rank was given to the automatic rifleman, with the logic being important weapon systems required more experience.
I thought the Lance Corporal thing was kind of already always there. I love the fact that he's just shooting it from like the hip. See, even I learned something new today.
And lastly, a grenadier manning the new M79 grenade launcher was added directly under the squad leader. The squad then consisted of a squad leader ranking sergeant and armed with a rifle, a grenadier ranking lance corporal and armed with an M79 and a pistol, and 3 fire teams of 4 men each. Each fire team consisted of 1 team leader ranking corporal and armed with a rifle, 1 automatic rifleman ranking lance corporal being the team's second most senior man and armed with an automatic rifle version of the rifle, and 2 riflemen each ranking private or private first class and armed with rifles. This organization...
Shit, I tried to pause it before... Okay, so Grenadier, nowadays, we got a 203 attachment that we attach under the M4s, and we use that. I mean, and typically there's one in each team. Hopefully, if not, there might just be two in a squad, and one team might just not have one. And it really just depends on how many people you have, because a lot of the times, at least when I was in, you hardly ever saw a full squad. But yeah, that's I didn't know they had a grenadier that was kind of solo or his own thingy.
Private first class and armed with rifles. This organization would have remained largely intact through Vietnam, although around 1967 to 1969, the M14 rifle would have been phased out for the new M16A1 rifle in Vietnam. Marines in Europe or the United States would have retained the M14 for a period of time. For the automatic riflemen, there was little difference between their M16 and other M16s in the squad, although a bipod was often used. After the war in 1975, the Marines adopted the M203 underbarrel grenade launcher. Unlike the Army, the Marines did not issue the M203 as standard during the final years in Vietnam. At this time, Marines made one rifleman per fire team a rifle grenadier, rendering the separate M79 grenadier redundant. Later, the early 1980s would probably be the most dramatic period for the rifle squad. Post-Vietnam, budget cuts meant that the Marine Corps had to make significant cutbacks in its manpower while maintaining its battalions. The initial solution was to maintain two separate organizations, one provisional organizations for FMF Atlantic units aimed at conflict with the Soviet Union, and one reduced peacetime organization for FMF Pacific units who were less likely to be embroiled in a new war. However, this would not be enough, and more overarching reductions were needed. Beginning in 1982, squads would be reorganized around two fire teams of 5 men each. It would be led by a sergeant squad leader. Each team would be led by a team leader ranking corporal. There would be a lance corporal automatic rifleman and 2 rifle grenadiers, one ranking lance corporal and the other private or private first class, and finally 1 rifleman ranking private or PFC.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's essentially 2 fire teams and a half. All right, so with the budget cuts, I don't even know if those budget cuts specifically were the time where the Marine Corps would get or have to downgrade a lot of their stuff, I guess, and like get less money than the other branches. I never really knew too much about that. I mean, all I ever knew was that the Marine Corps was supposed to be like the poor branch. That's pretty much it. So it would take 2 people away and I guess allocate them somewhere else to form a whole nother squad. And this might not seem like a lot, but I definitely felt it during ranges that we ran that if you take one person out even, right, from a squad, say from the first fire team or third fire team, it really doesn't matter who. That's now more weight that everyone else has to kind of distribute amongst themselves, right? Whether it's gear, extra equipment, extra ammo. It might not seem like a lot, but it can be quite a bit, specifically if you're dealing with casualties. Just because with casualties, say for example you've got a litter, you got someone on there, and you're rotating with the big team. Although a squad, I understand that they still have quite a bit of people, but every time you start taking one away, that's one less rotation of someone else that can help carry it, and then that's going to start to wear. So your little rest time in between to kind of rest up your arm to grab and go back on the litter again is going to be shortened every time. Trust me, it adds up quite a bit.
This reduced squad organization began to phase in with some battalions beginning in late 1982, although it didn't fully phase in before the critiques got the better of it. There were a number of flaws that were harshly criticized when the 11-man squad was introduced. First off, it was smaller than the classic 13-man squad. As we saw when the Marine Corps announced in 2018 when it wanted to reduce the squad to 12 men, Marines don't like it when squads get smaller. The reduction in squad size...
Wait, they did that in 2018? Where they actually thought about reducing it? I mean, it was technically already reduced because we didn't have enough guys for almost every squad. I think the most I saw in a squad was maybe, 11? Yeah.
Size made the squad more vulnerable to casualties, whether that be battle casualties or just regular shortages. Second, the transition to a 2-team setup would require a complete overhaul of Marine squad tactics, as they had been based around 3 teams for 38 years. It may have been easier to control for a squad leader, but it would be less capable of more complicated maneuvers that require 3 teams. And third, ammo is heavy. Experience during Vietnam had shown that carrying ammunition for a single grenadier...
what's that one term that every step sergeant likes to quote? A metric fuck ton of ammo. Uh, yeah, honestly, I didn't even think about that. Like, even with two people gone, that would still not only hamper, like, say, distributing that extra weight, but also just tactics and what you're capable of doing, right?
Here was sometimes a challenge for squads, so reduced squad carrying ammo for 4 grenadiers would probably be even worse. Additionally, whenever the M249 SAW got to units, the ammunition burden would only get worse. The Marine Corps strategy was to compensate for reduced manpower with increased firepower, but being a light infantry force, ammunition load would prove to be an extreme bottleneck to firepower. In 1985, the Marines reversed their rifle squad reduction, bringing the squad back to 13 men with 3 fire teams. Additionally, the second grenadier in each fire team was removed. From here until 2018, the main changes to the Marine Corps Rifle Squad were usually just the introduction of new equipment. The new M16A2 rifle phased out the older M16A1 through the mid to late 1980s, and the M249 SAW would be phased in by the early 1990s. The introduction...
I've said it again, I've said it multiple times. That SAW would never work for us. At least when I was in, man, doesn't matter how clean it was, doesn't matter how lubed up it was, perfectly working order, everything, that shit would jam. And oh my god, it would... The amount of stories. I'm actually really glad that they phased it out for the IAR.
The M249 meant the Marine Squad had a true squad automatic weapon, arguably the first it had since the M1918A2 BAR was replaced in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Further, in 1989, the squad's grenadier was reflagged as an assistant automatic rifleman, a position made more necessary by the belt-fed M249 SAW, and the
I'm pretty sure he's about to mention it, but yeah, at some point I did hear that the TL was, or team leader, they were the ones who actually had to carry the 203, and yeah, I mean obviously at some point that's going to get reversed. Even though I was the team leader and I carried one, looking pretty similar to today's already, although this is the 1990s now.
The grenade launcher was transferred to the team leaders. This is the equipment that would have existed through to the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. However, by the invasion of Iraq in 2003, the M16A4, distinctive by its Picatinny rail interfaces, would have begun replacing the A2. Still, as late as 2005, Muse in particular would still have been getting the older M16A2, as newer equipment was prioritized for combat units. As with all wars, the squad would have been modified in theater to cope with changing tactical situations and manpower shortages. Here are a couple examples that we've gathered from veterans of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. First, a situation where the squad is under strength. There's been a chronic shortage of infantry NCOs, so a squad may be led by a corporal or lance corporal rather than a sergeant. While lance corporals are privates...
Called it, didn't I? I mean, I'm pretty sure I said it. I think I did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. That ranking thing can be very subject to change, just depending on the scenario, just depending on, I mean, like you said, sometimes you just don't have enough people, and you gotta have someone fill the role.
First class could fill team leader roles. Generally speaking, ACOG optics had to be rationed. They go to team leaders and squad leaders first. You can find examples of private purchase optics at the time due to the shortage, such as these photos of Marines with ITL Mars gun sights from around 2004. Rather than running 3 fire teams, a squad may have had to run 2 reinforced fire teams if a 13-man paper squad only had 8 to 10 men available. This would be necessary to have fire teams that were big enough to be combat effective. This would usually result in the squad leader leading a team, while the other team was led by a team leader amounting to an ad hoc assistant squad leader. This could result in squads of 5 or 4 men, each with an M249 light machine gun and rifle with an M203 grenade launcher. In the respondent's case, the M203 went to a rifleman rather than the team leaders. In Afghanistan, an M240 general purpose machine gun could replace an M249 light machine gun in some squads due to longer than normal engagement distances caused by elevated terrain. In the respondent's unit, their company converted its weapons platoon into another rifle platoon, with its M240s and SMAs being spread around. If a weapons platoon was retained, M240 machine gun and SMA teams were usually attached to rifle platoons or squads. If patrols were platoon-sized, most of the company's support weapons could be concentrated into that patrol if necessary. Another case was an understrength squad that had its organization altered for urban combat during the Battle of Fallujah. In that environment, the squad was organized into a breaching team and an overwatch team. The breaching team would be reinforced to 6 men, all armed with rifles. This made it more efficient to clear buildings and made them more reactive if there was a contact. The Overwatch team, which may have included 2 or 3 M249 machine guns, could then stay outside the building to cover the street and act as a follow-on force. It should be noted that these variations aren't exhaustive, and there were a great many more infield modifications that could be made to adapt to a unit's specific circumstances. Back to the paper organization, equipment changed through the late 2000s and early 2010s. M4 carbines began to trickle into units probably around that time, although the Marine Corps didn't officially replace the M16A4 with the M4 until 2015. Further, in 2011, the M249 light machine gun was replaced with the M27 IAR, a variant.
Did you say 2011? Oh, yes. Wait. Hold on, he talks very quickly at some points, and I'm just kind of trying to ingrain everything. So there's a lot of movement within the fire teams, or how many they're having, how many people they're having in each one. All right, so also real quick, looks like the IAR finally came into play 2011, because I joined in 2015, and we were still using the SAW, and it's going to take time to make that full transition. But you start to see here that everyone also is now carrying that RCO. You got... team leader went back to 203. Because I did hear him say that before this one, I believe team leader didn't have it anymore, but now he's got it again. How I had it as a team leader, I really didn't care too much, beside the fact that it would get heavy sometimes in the front. I don't care what anyone says. I think I said that already. But, squad leader and team leader these days, at least from the time when I got out, typically just ran their slick. Like they didn't have any extra special equipment.
Variant of the Heckler & Koch HK416. M249s were then transferred to the company level, where 6 would be available to issue to the company's 9 rifle squads as needed. However, among the most extensive changes to the Marine Squad were announced in 2018. Initially in May 2018, the Marine Corps announced a reduction in the squad from 13 men to 12 men. This move was largely to be more manpower efficient and allow for a shift in manpower towards other parts of the Marine Corps, including cyber warfare and electronic warfare units. However, this change went against...
I'm not sure if I really said it, but it was like maybe 11 people. I don't think I ever saw a full squad when I was in. So technically, they're older to be doing it.
It's the recommendations made by Marines who tested the new wargs. Later in 2018, the Marine Corps retracted its initial announcement and now wants to enlarge the squads to 15 men. The squad will still be led by a sergeant armed with an M27. However, they'll now be assisted by an assistant squad leader ranking corporal. The assistant is meant to take some responsibilities off of the squad leader. In the Marine Corps, squad leaders often have to act as forward observers for artillery support or direct close air support, so the assistant will handle some of the fire's coordination and communications work for the squad leader.
That's also a thing too. You see in the movies, you see in shows and all that the guy is supposed to be the sergeant or whoever is in that leadership position. That they're always in the fight and they're engaging and whatnot. It's like, no, for the most part, they're kind of staying back, kind of moving their guys, I guess, if you want to call it, like as chess pieces. And this isn't because they don't know what they're doing, and this isn't to micromanage. And for the most part, I would assume at least the fire team leaders can move their squads without having been told to, like the whole individual action aspect, right? But essentially, like how he said, he's going to be doing a lot of very, I guess, taking in the bigger picture, to put it simply. But as far as the APL or assistant patrol leader, essentially that's just your first fire team's team leader, who is generally in that role.
Maybe that in the future, assistant squad leaders will have to become qualified as joint fires observers. This training isn't as thorough as the training a JTAC would get, but training JTACs is also an expensive endeavor and not realistic at the squad level. The assistant squad leader will most likely man a Prick 117 Golf radio. The squad will also be getting a squad...
We had a... God, I forgot what we called him. Essentially, he's the one that carried the radio, and he would always have to be close to our lieutenant to be able to help him communicate. The radio operator, that's what it was called.
Systems Operator, ranking Lance Corporal. They'll operate an Instant Eye quadcopter drone and a squad tablet. The drone is probably one of the more important changes, pushing an extended reconnaissance capability down to the squad level. This has a lot of interesting implications. For example,
I don't know, I just wanted to take a quick look at their gear, see how it looks. A lot of their gear looks very clean. It's mighty sus.
it allows squads to spot covered enemy positions from a high vantage point using a thermal camera, or enemy ambushes around a kink in a road that would be impossible to see from the ground. Drones can also be positioned on vantage points like rooftops to act as mobile cameras, observing specific areas for longer periods of time. The squad systems operator will also allow the squad to adapt to new technologies, possibly including new unmanned aerial and ground vehicles, counter IED equipment, and electronic warfare jamming equipment.
Oh, so this is the Thor. I'm really hoping I remember that correctly, because I always, for the most part, had to carry this. Just how it ended up being, because a lot of the guys who were on my team, even when I was a TL, they were carrying heavier stuff than me, so I never minded taking the less smaller thing. But this thing, one of the most complicated things I've ever had to try to learn, and I didn't even really learn it very well. But in any case, it's essentially supposed to think of it like a jammer that disrupts any IEDs to try to go off. So obviously we would use these during our IED training to prevent them from blowing up.
Meanwhile, the squad's close combat elements are its 3 fire teams. Each fire team will consist of a team leader, an automatic rifleman, a dedicated grenadier, and a rifleman, all armed with the M27.
So this is what I've been seeing recently. I don't see I don't know if maybe it's more accurate, maybe whatever the reason is, but since this is a single shot still, and the fact, you know what, I just thought about it, since they all have IARs now, right? Because that's supposed to be now, I guess, like the standard, right, for infantry, is that, wait, they've even got a different sight on it. It's no longer the SDO. I don't think I ever saw a 203, or even know if a 203 is compatible with an IAR. So, I mean, if it's not, then yes, I can understand why they would carry this. But that dude, I mean, specifically for me, I would hate having to carry that, because that's just extra gear that I got to keep track of, and I'm responsible for it. But yeah, I mean, essentially your APL or assistant patrol leader is essentially just going to be the team leader that's in the first fire team.
The plan is to have the grenadier armed with an M320 grenade launcher in the standalone mode. The M320 is pretty compact, arguably more accurate than the M203 in the standalone configuration, has more diverse possibilities for munitions, and takes front-loaded weight off of the rifle. When equipped,
front-loaded weight off the rifle. I swear to God, he like literally read my mind as far as that. Maybe it's more accurate. Maybe, honestly, I didn't even take weight into consideration, which obviously would be really great. So it definitely has its positives, which, you know, not looking at it and kind of just what he said about it, probably a good idea then. I wonder if they could connect the GLS to it, which is, I don't remember the exact name for it. All I remember is it was a GLS, and essentially, instead of the leaf sight, it's like this little, think of it as a mini RCO for the 203, and it was supposed to help you find the right elevation, have the right stability, so that way you can just aim directly instead of having to use the leaf sights, and then you'll know that you'll be on target. I don't know if they can attach one to these or if it's just leaf sight only.
An M38 Squad Designated Marksman Rifle, or SDMR, and an M3E1 Moz.
SDMR, that's what it was. Actually had a buddy. Oh, damn. That's a story for another video, because that one is very long. But I had a buddy of mine who I still talk with today that he actually had this, and he says that it's a pain in the ass trying to shoot from close. Like, we were in Syria, and we were doing some shooting drills, and essentially we just had pallets at certain distance, and shoot on the move, reload before a pallet, and then keep going. And this guy, as soon as he's getting closer, he's like, that shit is so zoomed in that he's like fucking rocking everywhere with it. I barely saw this just now. Now, I did hear that, I don't know if the MOS is completely phased out, but it's your Saltman, that they were going to phase out, or I think they might just be getting integrated into your basic squads, like right here. But I'm not too sure on that.
Will also be available to arm riflemen. The Maz is a Carl Gustav recoilless rifle. The Assaultman MOS, whose members man the legacy SMA, is going away. So squad level Carl Gs will eventually replace the SMA, which has traditionally been held in the company weapons platoon. Whether or not a squad will always take out the Maz is a different matter. We suspect that to be more of a weapons locker thing, with the squad only taking out a Maz if it fits mission profile. In addition to weapons,
I haven't heard any mention of the, what is it called? The Mark 32. Which is essentially your automatic grenade launcher, your war machine for Call of Duty fans. And yeah, I mean, I didn't hear any mention of it. Or I don't know if that was technically maybe an official thing. Maybe it was just something that we had. I don't know.
there are a couple other equipment upgrades the Marines plan to roll out into the future. First, they plan to suppress all of their M27s. Concurrently with their tests of the M27, they also tested Army Marines with suppressed M4A1 carbines. It seems that the results were compelling enough that in July of 2020, it was announced that they'd be contracting Knight's Armament Company for enough suppressors to suppress every M27 and M4 in inventory. Suppressors offer a number of advantages. Tactically, they can mask the direction shots are coming from. Although an enemy may know they're being shot at because the rounds are still supersonic and carry a sonic boom with them, suppressors can make it more difficult to return accurate fire. Other advantages include combating long-term hearing damage and making verbal communications more reasonable in combat.
That long-term hearing loss is still going to be there because the majority of us are not going to wear that ear pro. Or if we do, it falls out during a range. Make verbal communications easier. I mean, honestly, he did mention that it's not going to cancel all the noise, but at least if it can make it a little bit quieter, why not?
Second, the Marines are planning on procuring the Trigicon VCOG 1-8 variable optic as their new squad combat optic to replace the rifle combat optic. The intent's to increase the long-range effectiveness of the rifleman and automatic rifleman out to the maximum effective range of 5.56 while still giving them the option for low magnification in close quarters environments. Although earlier reports a year or two ago stated that the squad common optic would replace all optics in the squad, potentially including the loopholed 2.5 to 8 times variable used on the M38, reports since the adoption stated it'll only replace the rifle combat optic. It's unknown if the new optic will affect the current DMR optics since it has a similar capability.
Alright, let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Now, I thought I was going to have a little more to say, but damn, I never really paid attention as far as, or I don't think anybody ever really told us as to where all our tactics or just where all our gear, anything that we did, where it kind of came from in that specificness. I mean, I understand there's a lot of people that they try to get through, like, say, SOI and boot camp and all that. But even our seniors, right, when they taught us, it was mainly like, hey, this is the way we do things. There's a whole lesson behind the madness type deal. So we just kind of had to take their word for it, and hopefully that we were getting trained properly. We knew what we had to know. And yeah, I mean, honestly, it's interesting though that sometimes they would change and get very close to kind of what it is now, but then it would drastically change. Now it could have been due to budget cuts. It could have just been to how they maybe thought this could be a lot better. And I mean, definitely saw some positives and negatives as to every single decision that was made. I don't remember if you said that the changes in the future have already been made, or if they're still in the process of being made. Like I did know about the IR. I know about the suppressors. I didn't know about the scopes. Didn't know about the APL, the assistant patrol leader. So I don't know if that now has a specific role, or if it's just still the fire team leader from the first fire team. But other than that, I don't really have too much else to say. He did talk a little fast for me at some points, but a lot of great information. Now I even learned a few things, so I thought that was really cool, and I really like the way he just presented everything. So that's gonna go ahead though and do it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe. It really does help me a lot. Hit that dislike button if you don't like it. It helps me improve the channel. If you're curious to see what's coming up next, the description down below, you're gonna see a list of about 5 videos from top to bottom. It's gonna be how I view them. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.